Hello everyone, welcome to Merseyside Consultancy Bangladesh. This is Sanjida and today with us Lorraine.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Hi Sanjida, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to present about the IELTS speaking exam today, and first I'm going to give you a little overview of the lessons that I have for the audience. So the IELTS exam, as you probably know, has 4 sections: speaking, writing, reading and listening. And over the next few weeks, I'll be teaching your students about all of them. And specifically, we'll be focusing on vocabulary. That's really helpful in the exam. But we'll be talking about the marking criteria so that the students know what the examiners will be looking for. So today we'll start with the first part of the speaking section, just part 1. And I have a free handout that I can share with everyone as well, with some really helpful vocabulary and phrases.
Yeah, sure. So Lorraine আমাদেরকে IELTS স্পিকিং সেকশনের কিছু ট্রিক্স এবং কিছু লেসন শেয়ার করবে ওনার নিজস্ব তৈরি নোটসের মাধ্যমে, এবং তিনি সাহায্য করবে IELTS স্পিকিং এর ক্লাসগুলো কন্ডাক্ট করবে এবং সাহায্য করবে কিভাবে কোন টেকনিক্স ইউজ করে এবং টপিকস গুলো কিভাবে আমরা ইমপ্রুভ করতে পারি এবং স্পিকিং এর জন্য আমাদের কি কি ভোকাবুলারি দরকার। সো লরিনের ক্লাসের সাথে আমি থাকছি এবং আপনারা IELTS স্পিকিং ক্লাসটি জয়েন করুন জলদি, যাতে লরিনের লেসনস গুলো আপনারা জানতে পারেন এবং উনি আপনাদেরকে সাহায্য করবে IELTS স্পিকিং আরো ভালোভাবে জানতে এবং স্পিকিং এর সেকশন পার্টগুলো এবং সেকশনগুলো ভালোভাবে বুঝে নিতে। Yeah, Lorraine.
Okay, thanks Sanjida. So I'll share my slides now. If anyone has any questions, they can just comment and I'll try to get to them as soon as I can. Okay, so just to introduce myself to everyone, I'm Lorraine. I'm based in the UK. Currently, it is very snowy here, so it's very cold today. And I've been teaching English online now for more than 8 years and teaching English in general for more than 10 years. And I have been teaching the IELTS exam for a lot of that time. The exam has changed over the years, but there are many things which are really key lessons to know about the IELTS exam. I always tell my students that it's just as important to practice the exam structure as it is to practice the content, the vocabulary, the pronunciation and the grammar. And that's so that when you go to the exam, you are prepared. You're prepared for what you see, the experience, you're prepared for everything. So today I'll be giving you some overall tips about the speaking part of the exam, specifically part 1. Okay, so overall then, the IELTS exam is split into general and academic training. Okay, now the listening and the speaking sections are the same, whether you're doing the academic or the general exam. So that's quite useful. You can prepare for the same kinds of questions for speaking and listening, whether you're doing the academic or the general. Now, for many people watching this, you want to study in the UK at university here. So you'll be studying the academic exam. But as I say, the speaking section is the same. The speaking part is split into 3 different sections. You can find out all of this information by clicking a link, and I'll share that link with you all at the end of the session today. But this is public information for candidates. That's people taking the exam. And I recommend reading that, okay? Or you can watch these lives and I will explain these rules for you. So the speaking section of the exam is in total less than 15 minutes. So it's very quick, and each section lasts between 3 and 5 minutes. Okay. The first part is a little introduction, and that's so that you can warm up, so you can get prepared for the rest of the speaking section. Okay, it's just a little warm up. Part 2 is called the individual long turn. And that is when the examiner gives you a little card, and on that card you have a topic. And you can write some notes on there as well if you want to. Okay, and part 3, this is a two-way discussion. Okay, it's more general than the other parts, and we'll go into the details of each part in future live events here. Okay, so today we'll be looking at part 1. This is the introduction and interview. Okay, so in part 1, the examiner introduces himself or herself and asks you to introduce yourself and confirm your identity. So you just say who you are and give a little short introduction. Okay, nothing too long, but just a few words. And then the examiner will ask you general questions about familiar topics like home, family, work, studies, things like that. And those kinds of topics are very general. You know, everybody should have something to say about them. So it's not too specific. And I would recommend to all people taking the exam that you try to relax, okay? Try to smile a little bit, try to be, natural. Many people get very nervous in an exam. I completely understand, that's natural. But try to relax and try to just have a conversation with the examiner. You know, you can use your hands, you can maintain eye contact with the examiner as much as you can. And just try to enjoy the experience, because overall the IELTS exam is designed to see if you are ready to study in the UK or in an English speaking country. You can contribute to conversations, you can, you have the communication skills to meet people and to do well in your classes at university as well. Okay, so you need to show the examiner not just that you have the vocabulary skills and the pronunciation skills, but also that you can have a conversation in English. Okay, part 2, and we'll go over this in more detail in a future live. You'll be given 1 minute to speak and up to 2 minutes to explain, 1 minute to prepare and up to 2 minutes to speak about your topic. And they may ask you some extra questions. Okay, in the 3-way discussion, they'll ask you further questions and give you an opportunity to discuss more abstract issues and ideas. So you don't need to go into a lot of information in part 1, okay? You don't need to talk and talk. It's quite short and it's a warm-up. Overall, in all 3 parts of the speaking exam, these are the areas that your examiner is checking. They want to see that you can do these things. They want to see that you have the ability to communicate your opinions and information. Okay, so that's in a conversational way. All right, they want to see that you can answer a range of questions as well. They want to see that you can speak at length on a given topic. That would be part 2 there, and part 3. Speak at length. That means not just one sentence, but for a whole minute or 2 minutes. The examiners want to see that you can use appropriate language. Okay, so appropriate language means it's right for that situation. Okay. If you are using a lot of slang words or, maybe very, very formal words, that's not really appropriate. We want to hear natural, neutral information, words and vocabulary. Okay.
Slightest may be lexical resource and grammar and accuracy.
Yes, exactly. We will look at that, Sanjida. Yes. So I'll talk about the lexical resource in a moment. That's a really important role there. Yes, we'll go into that. Choosing the right words for the situation. Exactly. Yes. Okay, the examiner also wants to see that you can organize your ideas coherently so that there's a flow to your answers. Okay, you're not jumping around and mentioning lots of different things, you know, that you can organize your ideas so that the listener can understand you clearly. Okay. And express and justify opinions. So you can give your opinion, but also you can say why you have that opinion. Okay.
The reason. Yeah, you're talking about the reason about my opinions. So I have to explain that the reason. Why do I prefer this one or that one? All right.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And that's to show that you are open to ideas, right? It's if you go to a university in the UK and you have your views, but you can't really explain them, or you're not open to learning more, that won't mean you're not going to have a great experience, right?
Yeah.
But in this part, if you can express an opinion, justify it, say why you have that opinion, but also, open the dialogue and have conversations with people there, that will be the best kind of experience.
Yeah.
Great, lovely. And finally, they want to figure that you can analyze, discuss, and speculate about those issues. So, Sanjida, what do you understand by those words? What do you think that means?
That one, the analyze, discuss, and speculate about that. Yeah, it might be some elaborating things about the topic. If I can elaborate these by using my opinion or what I think about this or why about the topic I want to discuss. Maybe it's a bit of a discussion about the topic.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly.
About this and something elaborating the thing I want to discuss with the examiner and
yeah, absolutely brilliant. That's really, really good. You can go into more detail and have open dialogue about these things, but also the word speculate as well is very important, because especially when you're in a new culture, it might be that you don't necessarily have experience of certain things. But if you can speculate about it, that says like, okay, I don't feel that way, or I don't have that experience, but I can imagine what it's like for somebody else to have that experience. That's such an important part of higher education, higher studies, learning about things and being curious about it, even if that's not the way you see the world, maybe, but you can imagine other people feeling that way. Okay, great. So you mentioned earlier, Sanjida, that they are looking for lexical resource. You're absolutely right there. These are the 4 sort of sections of the marking criteria. And again, you can find this information on their website. And I recommend all candidates do this. It is using quite advanced language, so it's a little bit difficult to understand exactly what they're looking for, but we will focus on this together now, and I can explain part of it for you. Okay, so in part 1, it's the lexical resource part is most relevant. So I will focus on the lexical resource marking element today, because we're looking at part 1. And then I will explain the other 3 areas when we cover other parts of the speaking exam in future lives. Okay. But just to let people know that they're all important. They're all important. And the examiners will mark you equally on all of these. So it says the criteria are weighted equally. That means they have the same marking, the same grades. And then the score is decided on the average of all of those things. So while it is important to focus on your vocabulary and your lexical resource, it's also important to focus on your pronunciation. And I find this very, very often students have worked really hard on building their vocabulary bank, but their pronunciation of those words, they haven't spent much time on that. And that's really unfortunate because they both get the same amount of scores. So I recommend learning new words and phrases, absolutely, but learning how to say them, how to pronounce them, and how to use them correctly in sentence, okay? And when it's appropriate to use those words as well. Okay.
Yeah. So in IELTS speaking, these four parts are really important, like lexical resource, fluency and coherence, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot to think about here. There is a lot to think about, a lot of things to learn. So it's better, I think, to focus on one at a time so it doesn't get so overwhelming. So we'll focus on the first one now. What is it? What is lexical resource? So you may know part of these words, or you might be wondering, what does this mean? Well, it means how much vocabulary the candidate can use and how well they use it. Okay, and we'll look at some examples in a moment. It also considers the communicative functions of speech, okay, and the social meaning of speech. Okay, so all of this is going back to what we said at the beginning. The IELTS exam is designed to see how well you can communicate, okay? So listening, speaking, but also, you know, having a good conversation with people, contributing to the conversation, asking people as well what their opinions are. Social, you know, the social meanings of speech as well. Okay. Many of us have had conversations with people and we have to do all the hard work. You know, we're asking them questions and their answers are yes, no, yes. And it's really hard to have a conversation with those people. I understand it's hard in a second language to have conversations with those people as well. So really, we're going to work on making our candidates good communicators. Okay, saying yes, that's I agree with that. What do you think? Or I'm not sure. That's my opinion, but that's really interesting. You know, it keeps the conversation going. Okay.
To keep the conversation, you have to be communicative. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And you don't have to know everything. You don't have to have an opinion about all politics and religion and all of those things. You know, it's just a case of being open and interested in somebody else.
Yes.
Okay. So in part one, they're going to focus on general topics here. So home, family, work, studies and interests and things like that. So it's a good idea to have a basic knowledge of these areas and think about some opinions that you might have. Okay, so we'll look at that in just a moment. We've got a free handout that I'll show you again with the top 10 most common topics for the IELTS exam. Okay, you don't have to have an idea about all of those things. For example, if someone asked me about football or sports in general, I wouldn't really have much to say. But if I were preparing for the IELTS exam, I would plan a few phrases for those topics to say, well, I'm not familiar with sports in general, really, but I have these 3 things that I can contribute to the conversation. Okay. So let's take a look at some vocabulary then. We're going to look at some vocabulary for talking about personality. Okay. This is one of the main topics in part 1. They ask you about yourself. They'll ask you a few questions about you. So it's good to be able to discuss words related to personality. Now, some of these words are quite advanced here, so I'm just going to go through them with you slowly. Okay, so Sanjida, if you want to jump in with any answers here or any questions as well, please feel free. Okay, so these words on the left here are the antonyms of the words on the right, so they're opposite meanings. Okay.
Yes.
So we've got here the word introverted. Introverted, that describes a personality which is quite quiet, someone who likes to be alone, maybe someone who likes activities where they have just a couple of friends around them, but not lots of people. Okay. And the opposite of that word, Sanjida, can you see the opposite of that word? Sorry?
Is it quiet?
So introverted would be a synonym of quiet. So in some ways, a synonym, but we're looking for an antonym. We're looking for the opposite word here.
Okay, you were looking for the extroverted?
Extroverted, exactly. Yes, extroverted. These describe people who have very big personalities. They love spending time with many people. They like parties, maybe, or they like activities with big groups of people. They get energy from being around many people. So introverted is an antonym of extroverted here. Okay. Next one, talkative. Sanjida, you mentioned quiet in the last one. That would be the antonym of talkative there. Talkative people, to a certain extent, this is very good, you know, it's communicative, but sometimes there's an appropriate time to speak, and sometimes it's better to be a little bit on the quiet side as well. Okay, so these are antonyms. Self-confident here, these are people who are very, very confident in themselves or in their abilities to do things. Okay.
Yeah, so it goes insecure.
Wonderful, Sanjida. Insecure. Now, we all are insecure from time to time. It's perfectly natural. Many people are insecure, but when we're describing someone's personality, this is seen as quite a negative thing, and self-confident is seen as very positive. Yeah. The next one is a really, really interesting word, stingy. Stingy. People who don't like to give their time, their energy, their money to other people. Stingy. Okay. I don't like those people. I'm the opposite of that. The opposite word, can you see that, Sanjida?
Is it open?
Now in some ways you're right there. In some ways it could be open, but really what we're looking for here is generous. Generous people giving their time, giving their energy, giving their money to their friends, their family, maybe to charity, things like that. Generous. This is an adjective to describe people I really like to hang out with because I am one of these people too. Amazing. All right, here we've got diplomatic. People who really care about not hurting people's feelings. When you're a diplomatic person, you're very careful not to offend anybody. You won't offend anybody. The opposite of that, people that speak and they don't care if they hurt people's feelings. They say whatever they think. Sometimes it's a bit cruel or mean and not very nice. Do you know what those people are called, Sanjida?
Is it narrow-minded or?
Yes, in some ways, but maybe the adjective blunt. Blunt would be the opposite of diplomatic there. Yeah, so if for example, if your friend said to you, I bought a new dress, what do you think? Do you like it? You could say, if you want to be diplomatic, you could say, it's all right, quite like it, but I think the other dress looks nicer. Okay, that's a very British way to say it. It's very British. But blunt, that's when you say, oh, no, it's horrible. It makes you look awful. Yes, don't wear that dress. I don't like it at all. She would probably be quite offended by that, or maybe feel quite insecure then. So, yes, blunt isn't a good thing there, but diplomatic is a very good idea, especially in the IELTS exam. Especially in the IELTS exam, to show that you are you care about, you consider other people's opinions or other people's feelings. Okay, here we've got open-minded. Open-minded. Sanjida, do you know what open-minded means? Can you describe that?
Yeah, it's really kind of extroverted. I told you, like the person who wants to talk with everyone, who wants to communicate with everyone, who is really friendly, and yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And the opposite of that
is narrow-minded.
it is Sanjida. What are those people like?
Okay, they are like maybe they're not that much communicative or very critical or judgmental, and they think they judges everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Narrow-minded people, again, like we were saying earlier, they think that their way, their opinion or their belief is the only way, and everybody else is wrong.
Yes.
It's not fun to have conversations with those people, is it?
Yes. True. Very true.
This is a really difficult word for many students to pronounce. Enthusiastic. Enthusiastic. Passionate, excited, really cares about things. Okay. You can be enthusiastic about anything. Cats, dogs, painting, or music. You know, enthusiastic, really full of energy.
Yeah, absolutely. The creative people.
Yeah. What are you enthusiastic about, Sanjida?
Sorry.
What are you enthusiastic about?
Oh, I'm enthusiastic about painting.
Oh, great.
Yeah. I love doing art because painting is kind of like something I really love,
Yeah.
and it really helps to meditate yourself. It makes you calm while you.
Mm.
It's very patience. I need to paint and finish a painting, and it sometimes it might take time for 3 or 4 days or for 1 week even.
So you have to be quite patient then, and
Yeah.
you know, because it will take a little while. Wow, wonderful, Sanjida. Yeah, exactly. I love to hear people speaking about their passion. I love it when someone's really enthusiastic about something. I love to hear their enthusiasm about that. Now, of course, it's not always possible to be enthusiastic about everything. Sometimes we are apathetic about certain things, especially if, you know, when we're reading the news and it's very depressing. You know, some people just go, oh, I don't really care about that anymore. I'm apathetic about that subject now. Now, this word is very similar to in the spelling the word pathetic. Okay, but the a on the start at the beginning of the word is very important. Okay, pathetic is a very, very strong word about something being terrible. Yeah, it's pathetic, it's rubbish, it's garbage. Okay, it's not a nice word. Okay, apathetic, different. It means you just don't really care about it anymore. It's This is in some contexts it's okay. It's not necessarily a bad word, a negative word there. It just means you don't really care about something, and often you're apathetic because you just don't have the energy for it anymore. Okay, so just important to keep that in mind there, those two words. And finally, we've got reserved. Now, many people think British people like me are reserved. Okay, reserved meaning we don't show our emotions. Okay, we it's very difficult to see on our face how we feel about something. Well, I'm a British person and I'm the opposite of reserved. I'm very open. I show my feelings about things all the time. I tell people if I really like their art or their work, or you know, I care about a lot of things, a lot of topics as well. So I'm very open.
Yeah, I think I have this too. Both, like I sometimes I become reserved, sometimes I become open, and I feel like I have this too.
Yeah, it depends on the topic. Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
And that's a really good point, Sanjida, because all of these words here can be used to describe personality. Okay, your personality or someone else's personality. And we can describe people as being this way, but often our personality is a combination of all of those things. Or in some areas, from time to time we can be a little bit insecure, but with other things we feel very self-confident. So personalities really can include all of these characteristics and traits. So here are the answers to that. So for the audience watching, if you wanted to take a quick screenshot of those answers there, you can do. Alternatively, I've got the free handout with all of these words and phrases in it, which we can go through. I'll send the link in just a moment. Okay, so let's take a look at some example questions that you might find in part 1 of the IELTS speaking exam. Okay. How would you describe your personality? Now, here I've got an example answer. Okay, this is a solid band 6 answer. Okay, a band 6 answer. So we'll have a look in a moment about how we can improve it. But first, let's take a look at this answer. I would describe my personality as quite introverted. I enjoy spending time with friends, but I also like being by myself. It takes me a long time to get to know people, and I'm not so talkative. Okay, that's a nice answer. It's 3 or 4 sentences long. There's a few more advanced words in there. Okay, but we could improve that answer a little bit more. Okay, we can make that a little bit better. If you want to be a band 7, which is the requirement for most UK universities, not all of them. It could be that a band 6.5 is perfectly okay for some, but for many UK universities, they require a band 7. So let's take a look at the lexical resource criteria for band 7. So just to remind you, the marking criteria for the speaking exam is split into 4 different sections. One of them is lexical resource. Okay, and the 3 points that they're looking for here for a band 7 is that you can use vocabulary flexibly and discuss a variety of topics. You're flexible, okay? You're open, you're communicative. They also want to see that you can use some maybe less common or maybe some idiomatic vocabulary to show that your awareness of the kind of language we use in the UK. Okay, it's conversation style and collocation. Collocation means words that often come together. That could be 2 or maybe 3 words that you often find together, like business meeting or telephone call or something like that. Okay, and they do say in the exam that for a band 7, there may be some inappropriate choices. This is not a goal. This is not what you want to achieve, but if you do make some small inappropriate mistakes, then it's okay. It's a band 7. To get a band 8 or 9, you need it to be, free of any inappropriate word choices. And the last thing that they're looking for here is to paraphrase effectively. Paraphrase. The word paraphrase, what does that mean? That means to rephrase something effectively. Okay, say something a different way. Why is that important? Well, if you're at a university in the UK or in one of the many areas that the academic IELTS exam can prepare you for, it might be that you're speaking with somebody and they don't understand the word that you're saying. Maybe you're mispronouncing it, or maybe they just don't know that word. If you keep saying the same word, that's not going to help them. But if you can paraphrase what you mean, that will help them. Okay, maybe they don't understand the word collocation. So instead of just repeating collocation, that's not going to help them. You can paraphrase it by saying, words which often come together, or you can often find these 2 words or 3 words together in a sentence. Okay, that's paraphrasing it, explaining it with different words. So let's take a look at that model answer again, but this time we'll focus on how to improve it to reach the band 7 rather than the band 6? Okay, so here we've got some suggestions. These are suggestions. These aren't, it's not black and white. It's not if you say these words, you will get a band 7. That's not necessarily the case, but we've got to think about how to improve our answer. Okay, so here I've added a linking phrase, an introductory phrase here. I suppose it shows that you're thinking, and it also gives you a second to formulate or organize your ideas. I suppose I would describe my personality as, so you are repeating part of the question, that's fine. Quite introverted? Let's take a look. Have we got any more, better, advanced adverbs we can use there? Maybe like relatively. Or if it's accurate, you can say extremely introverted. Okay. Or occasionally. Sometimes we're not always introverted. You can say occasionally to show an adverb of time or frequency. Okay. We can use less common phrases. Okay. Instead of get to know people, we can say feel at ease with people. Slightly less common, slightly more advanced, idiomatic. Okay. This is what they're looking for. And here, I'm not so talkative. You can say particularly. Now, if you are choosing more advanced vocabulary, I recommend choosing words that you can pronounce. Okay, it may take a little bit of practice. You might need to repeat this word, particularly. Keep practicing it. It might feel a bit strange, but it means that you'll be prepared to say it. But don't choose a word that's going to be really difficult for you to say, right? Because then you'll trip over it. What are you going to say there, Sanjida?
Yeah, I was saying that particularly. I was practicing.
Many people do that. Yeah, they tend to have. After my lessons, I send an audio recording of any really difficult words to my students, and often they play that while they're driving. So they're driving and they're repeating after me, particularly, and over time it really helps. That's how we learn those words when we're kids. Native speakers learn it.
If I use some words really I want to remember all the time and I want to practice, I also do this sometimes while working something.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so one thing I will mention here about preparing for part 1 of the IELTS exam, it's really important that you don't memorize a chunk of Lexis. You don't memorize this full answer. And the reason is that it will come across as quite unnatural. So if you memorize this full text and when they ask you that question, you just repeat it, that's not showing your communication skills. That's showing your memory skills. And honestly, that's really hard work to remember it for every kind of topic. So what should you do instead? Well, memorize phrases, just a few words, just phrases. Okay. And that means they'll be ready to go when you are, answering your question. But it also means you can pick and choose which phrases to use depending on when they're appropriate. Okay, so just short phrases or collocations like relatively introverted or to feel at ease with people. Things like that, just phrases. And that way you'll remember, which prepositions to use, which articles to use, which adverbs or adjectives to use with different words. Okay, but don't memorize full chunks. I've had some students who have done that before, and it's like having a conversation, not with a person necessarily, but with an audio recording or with a machine. And that's not preparing you for life in the UK, right? So just phrases. Okay, so here's another question here. Let's take a look at this one. If you could change something about yourself, what would it be? Okay, now I just want to remind you of the criteria earlier, that the markers, the examiners are looking for, the social meaning of speech, communicative skills. Okay, so as well as the rules of language here, it's important that you understand that you are having a conversation with somebody. So it would be easy here to be like, oh, well, if I could change something about myself, well, my English is terrible and I hate my accent and I'm bad at maths. You know, like, that's not a great conversation here. So thinking about the appropriate answer is really important. So here we've got an example answer. I would like to be more outgoing. Sometimes I wish I could start conversations with people. For example, my classmates. But I tend to wait for other people to start talking. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a standard answer, standard band 6. Yes, Sanjita?
Yeah. Oh, I was just reading this line.
Right. So really common, but solid band 6 answer, but we can do better. Okay. That's a good question. I would say don't use that too often. Like if you start every answer with that's a good question, they might start to think maybe she doesn't really mean that, or he doesn't really mean that. But yeah, that's a good question. Also, sound enthusiastic when you say it. If you're just like, that's a good question, that doesn't come across very well.
Expression really matters when talking.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So you would say, that's a good question. I would like to be more outgoing. Sometimes, okay, sometimes can be a bit improved. We can say occasionally there. Yeah. I wish I could start. Let's try and throw in an idiom here. Strike up conversations with people. That's a phrasal verb there, I should say. It's idiomatic, but it's a phrasal verb to strike up conversation with people. For example, my classmates. Great. You could even say, for instance, there. If you tend to say example all the time, think of some alternatives, for instance, or to illustrate that, things like that. But I tend to wait for people to start talking. We can do better than that. If you want a band 7, instigate the conversation. That's a nice advanced verb there. Okay. And by all means, you know, when you're practicing this, if you come up with your own answer, you can always improve it. Yeah, it can be a work in progress. Give your answer and then look at it, review it, see how you can improve it yourself. You know, it's okay if your answer isn't like this straight away, but start and then see what you can do to improve it.
Yes.
Here's another one. Who do you take after in your family? A lot of students have problems with words like this, phrasal verbs like this, take after. Okay, so take after means who in your family are you most like, either the way you look or in terms of your personality. Okay, it's not look after, which is very similar phrasal verb. So it's important to understand that. If you don't understand a word or a phrase in a question, you can ask the examiner, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that phrase. Could you explain that for me? And then the examiner will say, yeah, sure. Who are you most like in your family? Okay. So you can ask them questions if you need to, but of course it's better to prepare for it so that you understand those words and phrases. So here's an example answer. I take after my grandmother. She's quite shy, but she can be very funny, and we both like to read. I'm also a little bit like my father because he likes to do things by himself, like fishing or painting. Okay, so here we've got some interesting infinitives here and gerunds. Well, we can say he likes doing things as well if you want to. It's good to be able to understand when to use an infinitive or a gerund as well. But this is quite a simple answer. It's not really impressive just yet. We could improve that by adding different advanced words like we have done before, remarkably, extremely. We can also repeat part of the question to show that you've understood what the examiner is asking you. Okay.
Yeah.
You could rephrase it as well. Think about paraphrasing effectively. You know, you could say, I am very similar to my grandmother. Okay. Quite, I don't really like quite or very. These words are always, these can always be improved. Okay. If you want to use extreme adjectives, that's always a good idea as well. Hilarious. She's hilarious. That's an extreme adjective to describe a personality. Or extremely witty, you could say as well. Witty is a less common word, but still, you know, we use it all the time in English, but it's less common than funny. Okay. If you want to change a larger part of the sentence here, you need to make sure that it still makes sense in the context. Okay. If you want to replace he likes to do things by himself with he is independent, let's take a look. Does that still fit? Because he is independent, like fishing or painting. That doesn't quite fit now, does it? So let's rephrase it in order to make it fit. You could say he enjoys solitary activities. Solitary, that's an advanced word. Like fishing or painting. There we go. That makes sense now. That fits and it's more advanced. Okay. Again, if it's difficult for you to say solitary, then choose an easier word. Okay. Last one here. And I want to focus, even though we're working on lexical resource today, I do want to focus a little bit on the grammar structure briefly. This is the last question, and it's a hypothetical question. If you were an animal, what kind of animal would you be? Ooh, that's an interesting question, isn't it? This is the perfect opportunity to say, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I haven't really thought about that before. Or an animal, you know, it shows that you're enjoying the conversation or you're open to communicating.
Yeah.
But what kind of structure do we need when we're discussing a hypothetical situation? Okay, what kind of structure, what kind of grammar structure? We need a conditional sentence. Now here, this is not possible. Okay, you can't be an animal. It's not possible to be an animal, so we need the second conditional here. Okay, so just to recap then, zero conditional is if something always happens. First conditional, we use if something will happen if something else happens, okay? Second conditional is if it's impossible, that can't happen. And third conditional is it's impossible and it's in the past. So we can't go back in time to change things. I recommend learning about the conditional structures, really spending some time focusing on those, because using one of the 4 conditionals can improve your answer so much in speaking and in writing. Okay, so using those correctly, and it is quite tricky, grammar, using those correctly will really improve your answers. So we use a conditional structure here, but we can follow what they've said in the question. If you were, that's the past simple, an animal, comma, what kind of animal would you be? Okay, would plus the infinitive of the verb without to. Past simple, would, infinitive. Okay, I guess I would be a big bird like an eagle. I love to feel free, and flying high in the sky would be an amazing feeling. I also love beautiful scenery, and I would like to see the world from a bird's perspective. On the other hand, I'm vegetarian, so maybe being an eagle wouldn't suit me. That's the longest answer we've had so far in part 1. That's 4 lines long there. But we've used a lot of would, to show that we've got the second conditional down. We know what that means. Okay. And we've discussed 2 different sides of 2 different perspectives of this answer. On the other hand, okay, that's a really good thing to show. But we can still do better. This is how I might improve it. These are suggestions again. Instead of I guess, I would say, oh, if I had to choose. Okay. Also, a hypothetical introductory phrase here. I would be a big bird. We can do better than big. Large, maybe. Or a huge bird, you could say. Okay. Flying, let's see if we can improve that verb. Soaring, that's nice, isn't it? Okay, an amazing feeling. Yeah, amazing is a good word, but it's also quite common. We can improve that by using liberating. That's a less common and more advanced word. Okay, make sure with your adjectives, your endings are correct. People often mix up ed and ing endings. Okay, there's a very simple rule there. Okay, so I recommend reviewing that. If you're describing something, then it's ing. Okay, if you feel a certain way, it's ed. I feel liberated when I would be flying high. Okay, so check those rules. I also love beautiful scenery. Everyone loves beautiful scenery, really. So maybe that's a bit redundant. We can always improve that. We can maybe cut some out of it. But it makes sense in the context. And I would like to see the world from a bird's perspective. That really shows you're open-minded there, doesn't it? Okay. Maybe we could change the last part. Maybe an eagle wouldn't suit me. You could improve that and say perhaps, instead of maybe, perhaps a herbivore would be a better choice. Okay. That's a 7 answer, a band 7 answer. All right, so we've looked at how to improve these questions and answers. I'd like you to have a think about those questions and how you might answer those questions. One thing my students often ask me is, do you have to tell the truth? Well, my opinion about this, my personal opinion about that is, look, if you have an opinion about it, if you have a point of view which is the truth, yes, say it, right? And the reason being, if the examiner asks you follow-up questions and you have told a lie or you've made something up completely, it's going to be quite hard for you to continue along that route, isn't it? So I say, yes, tell the truth. I mean, you're not there to impress the examiner in terms of your amazing personality and all these wonderful hobbies and characteristics you have. That's not what you're there for. You're there to show you can have a good conversation. You are open-minded. You are aware of things in the world and that you are interested in other people's perspectives as well. Okay. If you want to take a screenshot of those questions and have a go at those, it would be a good time for you to do that while this is all fresh in your mind. Okay. Sorry, Sanjida, I didn't quite catch that.
Sorry?
What did you say? Can you repeat that for me?
Oh, yes, I was just saying that if anyone wants to take a screenshot of it, they can. Our this live will be here in our page. So if anyone wants to see this session again, wants to watch this session, they can do it.
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. Yes, you can watch it as many times as you need to.
It's really a very, very, very helpful session for us.
Wonderful. I'm really glad. Me and my colleagues at our Intrepid English School, we're really happy to help students with the IELTS exam. I just included some smiley faces at the end. These are the lovely teachers that I work with every day. And yes, we're really passionate about helping students to learn English, specifically for coming to the university in the UK as well. So just wanted to say thank you to people who have watched and to anyone who watches later. And yeah, I'll see you again soon for part 2 of the IELTS exam.
সবাইকে অনেক অনেক ধন্যবাদ লরেনের এই সুন্দর সেশনটি দেখার জন্য এবং আপনারা যদি আবারও এই সেশনটি দেখতে চান আমাদের ভার্সিসাইড কনসালটেন্সি পেজে এসে এই সেশনটি দেখতে পারবেন আর পরবর্তী সেশনে আমরা স্পিকিং এর 4টি পার্ট থেকে একটি লেক্সিক্যাল রিসোর্স নিয়ে আজকে আলোচনা করেছি এবং পরবর্তী সেশনে আমরা দ্বিতীয় টপিকটা নিয়ে বা দ্বিতীয় সেকশনটা নিয়ে আলোচনা করব সেই পর্যন্ত আপনারা সবাই ভার্সিসাইড কনসালটেন্সির সাথে থাকবেন এবং আমাদেরকে সাপোর্ট করবেন আমাদের পেজে লাইক কমেন্ট করে এবং আমাদের কন্টেন্টস গুলো শেয়ার করতে পারেন এবং আপনাদের যদি কোনো প্রশ্ন জানার থাকে আপনারা কমেন্ট বক্সে বা আমাদের পেজে ডাইরেক্ট মেসেজ করতে পারেন Lorraine, thank you so much for your help and for conducting this class.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm very glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day, everybody.
Of course, have a nice day to you too. ওকে, সবাই ভালো থাকবেন। দেখা হবে
Yeah.
আমাদের পরের ক্লাসে। বাই বাই।